And welcome to the JEFCOED Roundtable, the show taking you inside Jefferson County Schools. I'm John Huddleston. We appreciate you joining us today. Today we're talking about an issue that you probably heard a lot about in the news, the Literacy Act. You know, it was passed by the state legislature back in 2019, and this year is the year that it begins to impact students. The short-end version, probably what gets talked about most in the news, is that third graders must be reading on grade level by the end of the year, or they risk being held back. That's certainly what's garnered the most attention and the most headlines in the media, but that's just one facet of the Literacy Act. With more now on its intention and what it means for Jefferson County Schools students, here's Maya Johnson.
This is not something that is set up to hurt your students. This is something to help your students, to build them in the capacity of being a lifelong learner that has a strong reading academic background.
Hooked on phonics. Reading comprehension and fluency are just a few components centered around the Alabama Literacy Act. The act, passed in 2019, focuses on students in kindergarten through the third grade.
Looking at the overall progress of that student when it comes to their reading ability, looking at the comprehension skills and seeing what of they are doing on grade level or below grade level.
The act was put in place to ensure when students reach the end of third grade, they are fundamentally ready to be promoted to the fourth. Dr. Orletta Rush says being able to double down on words and comprehend is by far the most critical for further success.
What we were seeing is by the time they reached third grade, there was a big deficit that we could be able to identify. So that's particularly why third grade was more or less looked upon, because you have 2 years left in an elementary foundation, but you're in your third year of elementary and you're still behind. So it needs to be seriously some tactics put in place for academics to be advanced.
Dr. Rush says the state taking a stance of this magnitude was imperative.
You have to look and be able to make that determination. And if you see those different pathways that you have with this act, it's not just hinged upon the testing. You have portfolios that you can look at, report cards, intervention data that is given back, so many different avenues through this act to look and see if the students have mastered. And then when you still see that those skills are not mastered, you have to ask yourself as an educator, is it productive for this student to move them on to the fourth grade unprepared and not on grade level?
K through 3 students will undergo tests 3 times a year to keep track of their reading levels.
And everybody learns at a different pace.
And I think that's it. It's the connection. That
like one thing I always tell parents, it's like popcorn. Everybody pops at a different time. So everyone's it's gonna click at a different time.
Warrior Elementary School reading specialist Chrissy Hanley and teacher librarian Allison McCombs say their goal is to close the gap each year so students who are struggling don't fall further behind.
We meet monthly in PST, and that's our problem-solving team, to where we identify the students who are struggling and try to really figure out what their deficiency is and find ways to target that. We have some interventionists on our campus this year, and so that's been very helpful. They've helped really target those specific needs for those students.
It's kind of opened up the portal of the importance of collaboration, not only with reading coach, teachers, librarian, but also parents, and just the team effort that it takes to help our children succeed.
This is the Lounge and Read, one of the many ways the teacher librarian at Warrior Elementary has to help students with literacy. If you want to read aloud with a buddy, there's another area for that.
Divided, but you decide which Pokemon.
McCombs says she wants her students to feel like the library is their safe space for reading when they walk through the doors, starting with the 5-finger rule.
They can choose any book they want, they open up to a page, and they count the words they don't know as they read. And if they get to 4 or 5 words, they know that's too hard, not yet can they read it. I always love the power of yet, because as we grow, we can get to those books that we can read. But I try to choose that and make them accountable for their choices as they read.
Hanley and McCombs both agree it's important when parents and guardians are notified if their child is struggling and they need your help.
And notified of their progress. So not only will they see, hey, your child is struggling in this area, this is what we're doing, this is what you can do at home, and this is our goal as a team.
We have a parent resource room that they can check out things. I have made specific decodables or whatever the weakness is identified by our data to help parents with the SRIP, because there is a parent component to that intervention plan. And I think that parents just need to be aware that it's not to let them down of, oh, my child is behind, but to say, hey, together we can improve this.
Educators want to stress, from kindergarten to third grade, you are teaching students how to read. But after the fourth grade, students are expected to read in order to learn. Maya Johnson for Jefferson County Schools.
Maya, thank you very much. Joining me now to discuss further today, our panel. We appreciate all of y'all being here. I'll introduce each of you one at a time. Dr. Angela Watkins is the Director of Elementary Curriculum for JEFCOED. The Literacy Act has obviously been a big part of her life over the past couple of years. We're also joined today by Warrior Elementary Principal, Dr. Sandra Lyle. You saw her teachers in Maya's piece a few moments ago. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Miss Kimberly Decker, reading coach at Concord Elementary School. She's in the trenches every day working with our teachers and our students. Thank you to each one of you for being here today to discuss this very important issue. Dr. Watkins, I'll begin with you today. What in your mind maybe is the single most important thing if a parent's sitting at home watching this that they need to know about the Literacy Act? Let's say they have a third grader, and what do they need to know at this point?
At this point, I would say they would definitely need to reach out to their teacher. They would need to sit down, have a conference with their teacher, talk about the strengths of their student at this date, talk about next steps as to what they need to work on at home, and also to be reassured by their teacher that they are in this together, that this is a team approach, and that no one is out there alone. So the first thing they need to do is reach out to their teacher.
Yeah, Dr. Lyle, Dr. Watkins brings up a great point there. This is not just the schools having to deal with this. This is parents play a huge role in making sure that their kids are reading on grade level.
Absolutely, and that's one of the great things about this act is not only is there a parental component that's added to it, but there's actually tools to help the parents so that they could do things at home. Actually, in the SRIP or the Student Reading Improvement Plan, there is a parent component required.
Absolutely. Ms. Decker, you're in the schools, obviously at Concord Elementary every day. You're in the trenches, I should say. How is the getting students ready and the implementation of this going so far?
It's going well. We have so many things in place thanks to Jefferson County and the support we get from them. Having the privilege of being a reading coach at Concord, I get to work alongside teachers and parents and students to identify their strengths, their weaknesses, and like they said, put a plan in place for success. We want to focus in on the success, and then when we find the deficiencies with those students, then we tackle that as a team. And it just makes a difference when you have more than one person looking at the data or the plan, and we make sure that the parents know what it means. It's not language that they can't understand. So they can come in for conferences, they can help plan the SRIP, the Student Reading Improvement Plan. So it's going great.
Dr. Watkins, when you talk about the SRIP, that's something that begins very early on in an academic career.
Absolutely. Our students take their beginning of the year assessments, and all of the teachers and the reading coaches and the principals, they sit down and go through that data and develop that plan based off of that data. Yes. Those plans are very specific and intentional to the needs of the students. Absolutely. And I think what is great is that they start as young as kindergarten, and then we move on into first, second, as well as third. And so we never just jump in and start working with the student. We have to understand where that student is being successful and then where they're struggling so we can take them further. Right.
I don't want to get off on a soapbox here because I know this is something that we're both very passionate about, but this furthers the need. You got to have kids in school starting in kindergarten. Yes, please absolutely. Don't wait yes. to bring them starting in first grade. Talk about that a little bit And because when you talk about reading and you talk about the pillars of literacy, phonics is one of the biggest things they talk about.
Absolutely.
That's something starting in kindergarten. Just talk about the needs to have them in school that early.
Absolutely. It is critical that our students come to school starting in kindergarten and that they're there every day.
Yes.
Teachers have been trained to notice where students are struggling early on. And so if they're not there in school consistently, then that starts those gaps into widening when they're not there. Teachers want them there. The administrators, the coaches here at the central office, we want them there. We do not want our students to be at home all day, not learning, not engaging, and being social around students. So, you know, phonics is, yes, that is truly that first step, but it also is that social aspect. Kindergarten students need to be around other kindergarten students. They need to be learning. They need to be taking turns and making sure that they're listening to the teacher and hearing those sounds and hearing those words spoken on a daily basis. And as a former kindergarten teacher, that truly has my heart. I love to see students at school.
If there is a problem discovered early on, what's that conversation look like? And either one of y'all can take this. What does that conversation look like with a parent moving forward at that point?
Absolutely. So we try to make sure that parents are involved at all aspects. And it's important to remember that even though we are really seeing the implementation of this Literacy Act this year, really the plans have been put in place for a very long time.
Right.
Our teachers have been preparing. We've already started those processes on our schools where we have our monthly meetings, our problem-solving team meetings where we look for those areas where our students need the support. We are communicating with our parents weekly, letting them know what's going on. We also, once we see that problem, then we're letting them know and giving them very specific things that they can do at home in addition to what we're doing at home. And just to further on what Dr. Watkins talked about on our attendance, when we provide those interventions, if the students are there missing those interventions that we have scheduled, then it sets us back even further.
Yeah, and this was passed back in 2019. Let's
Right.
not forget about that. So we know it's coming for a while, delayed 1 year. Now we're finally to the implementation of this. And do you find too, maybe some of the angst has gone away from this too, now that people really understand it? Because I think back to 2019, when I was a reporter at that point, it was almost like it was a dirty word almost,
Yes.
Literacy Act. But
Yes.
do you feel
Yes.
like it's kind of, the angst has gone away?
Absolutely. So in 2019, it was passed, and I feel like Jefferson County provided ways for us in schools to hit the ground running. And looking at it and picking it apart and asking, what does this mean for our students in Jefferson County? And then down to what does it mean for our students in our school? So we're providing more information to parents. We're inviting them for meetings to talk, and it's not just one time you can come in. If you have an issue or a question about any part of the Literacy Act, when we meet with parents, we tell them, call. We will set up appointments for you to come in and discuss these things. We can do WebExes. I've done a WebEx with parents because they couldn't get out of the house to come to some of the meetings. So I really do think that we know a lot now and we understand it, and we can, we give it to the parents. We're hitting the target, I guess you would say. We are making sure that they are aware. And it's not something to be stressed about. It's something that we are helping. It's a help, the support system that we put in place.
Obviously, the measuring stick on this in terms of retention is the ACAB test, correct?
Yes, sir.
If a student does take that test and it shows they're not rating on grade level, that's not the end of the road for them. That triggers a separate, there's a couple of different ones. I want y'all to go through both of these, the good cause exemption and then also supplemental options to proficiency. Talk about if a student this year takes their ACAP, they finish below grade level, what happens next at that point?
So, okay, that's a very good question. So even when our students enter into third grade, we first start with a portfolio. So no matter where the student is functioning, that portfolio is the story that tells the tale throughout the school year. That one assessment is just one snapshot of what that student can do. And so while the teachers are teaching in the classroom on a daily basis, they are collecting evidence from those students. They are grading those pieces of evidence. They're working with those students in intervention. And so they're keeping all of those pieces in a portfolio that will support the student. So if that third grade student takes that ACAP score in May and they are not successful, One of the pieces that we can look at is that portfolio to see if that student has been successful throughout the school year, qualifying and doing well, mastering the standard, okay? That's one way. But then you also mentioned those good cause exemptions. And so we have to look at a student for not just that third grade year, but what happened second grade year? What happened first grade year? You know, what was in place for this student? Has this student been struggling over the last 2 years and they had a student reading improvement plan, which you'll hear some people say the SRIP or the SRIP. So we look at all of those pieces to determine, you know, is this student successful enough to move on to fourth grade? Or did this student not master enough of those standards that they need to be retained in the third grade? Then there's also the option of our summer camp. And so we have that option when a student does not meet that cut score for ACAP, they can attend our summer camp. That's another 16 days of intentional instruction in that area where that student was weak, and we give them another reading test, ACAP supplemental test, that they are able to take to see if they have grown or if they mastered that concept. So it's not just a one and done. Yeah. And retention is not our goal.
Yeah.
Our goal is to support our students along the way, and with all of these pieces in place, we are able to really determine if that student can move on based on the law, or does that student need to be retained.
We call it pathways to promotion.
Yes.
Good term.
Yeah.
One thing Jefferson County Schools has been very intentional about is implementing reading coaches over the last couple of years. I want you, Ms. Decker, to kind of talk about your day-to-day and really what your role is, I guess, in helping students and teachers for that matter, too.
Absolutely. So as a reading coach, my day starts with so many things. Visiting classrooms, working alongside other teachers. We call them coaching cycles. Once we've looked at the data and we see that we have students, a good amount of students that need that extra support, the teacher and myself, the reading coach, we get together, we meet, we just dig into the data, and we pinpoint exactly where these students are struggling, their deficits. And so we make a plan, the teacher and the coach, we make a plan, and then we implement that plan in the classroom, working side by side, conversations. What do you notice? What's going on with this student? What can we do to make this student have success? So working with the teachers, working with students in small groups within the classroom, working with individual students on what they need support. Parents, we call parents, we meet with parents alongside the teachers. And as a coach, we are equipping teachers with tools they need to be successful once we come out of that classroom. So that when we come out of that classroom to go into another classroom, that teacher has been equipped with tools that they can continue to use without us there. And it's not always said, it's done and we're over. We will always follow up with the next data meeting and how are your kids doing? And the door's always open, always open.
Yeah, you mentioned a cycle. It really is a cycle. It comes back around.
Yes, absolutely. And we call them, you know, we call them coaching cycles because we work with those particular teachers, maybe 3 or 4 at a time, where we're in the room at least 30 to 45 an hour and working alongside of them. And then we usually do that 4 to 6 weeks. We do a post data to see where their kids are. Did we make improvements with all kids? If we didn't, what are our next steps for those students that didn't improve where we wanted them to be? And then, you know, like I said, after looking at other data later, they progress monitor, which, you know, you have those 3 times a year where we do our big assessments. But in between, we progress monitor in their deficit areas so that we see we're making growth or not making growth to make adjustments. So once the cycle is over, we're constantly talking and getting together and making sure that the kids are being successful.
Dr. Lyle, from your perspective and administrator perspective, how big of an impact have the reading coaches been in Jefferson County Schools?
Well, they really have been amazing. It's very difficult as an administrator to be everywhere with everyone as needed. And we all know that the real work is going on in the classrooms.
Yes, that's right.
And as often as I would like to be in the classrooms, we have 60 people on our campus, and it's impossible to be in 60 classrooms. So having that additional set of hands, and then also our district has done an amazing job with equipping our coaches
Yes.
with professional development and tools and turnaround
Absolutely.
information to help the teachers in the classrooms. They also help us in our data meetings. They also help us when we're having any kind of professional development on campus. So that has just been really a remarkable tool for our teachers and for our campus.
Dr. Watkins, if a parent's seeing this and they're saying, I really need to get involved and I need to help my child here, what's some basic things they could do at home, I guess?
So for starters, one of the things that parents can do at home is to have conversations with your students about things that are going on in the world. If you're in the grocery store, you're down on the aisle where you're looking at your cereal, helping the students pick out cereal, pick out using the colors, letting them pronounce those names of those cereals. The candy, they love candy. Start a conversation with them. How do you say this word? You know, pick out those funny words with them and start to just make this a part of everyday life. It is very, very fun to work with your students when you're at home, when you're cooking. Talk using those terms, those vocabulary terms of what are we going to measure? What's going to be the outcome of this piece that we're trying to make? So I think right now, parents, we are here for you. Actually, we have things to support you at home. And so if you would just call the school, we can get information out to you immediately. If you can't get to the school, call me. I am here at the central office, and I am definitely able to pull some supplies together and get out to those parents, because we want you to have what you need at home to work with your students, just like we want our teachers to have what they need in the classroom to work with your students.
And I think you bring up a good point there. It's so important to make sure you're engaging with your child right there. And like you said, not even necessarily on, let's sit here and read this book. I know I have a first grader right now, and one thing her teacher said, I want y'all to make a grocery list together and go over those words on there and everything. It can be the little things like that that you can see a huge amount of growth in with your child.
Absolutely. Learning has to be authentic, and it starts at home. Parents are the child's first teacher. And so we want to partner with our parents to make sure that their students are successful. And so let's make this fun. Let's not put our anxiety over on the children about the laws that take place. All of those things will take care of itself because we're here as a team working. So let's make this fun for our students. They can't learn when they're stressed.
That's right.
And there is a reason that the legislature chose that third grade year, because what's the saying? You learn to read in the first couple of years, and then after that, you're reading to learn.
That's exactly right. You're right, John.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's why it's so important.
If, let's say, a child does go through this whole process, and at the end of the day, it is made, the decision is that they have to be retained. What's the next steps there? What triggers after that? What's the different services that might be available to them?
Well, so when we have to retain a student, the very first thing that we do is we make sure that we have all the documents, we have all of the data to support and know why that student is being retained. And then we're going to be communicating with the parent. When we see that there's a potential, or we're worried about a student that is struggling academically, the communication with the parent starts as soon as we start seeing those concerns. Right. And so we let the parents know what's going on. We like to consider things like making sure that the student has summer resources. They're able to come to the summer reading camp. They have additional opportunities to try to catch up over the summer. So it's not they're going to be retained and then they come back at the beginning of the next school year in that same grade level. We have things going on all the way until then, because we want our students to have as many tools as they can to be successful. Repeating a school level is not what's going to help them be successful the next year. They have to acquire additional skills and learnings to help them be successful.
As we wind down here, I want to kind of just open the floor. Any final thoughts that you want to talk about it maybe we haven't discussed yet on this whole thing?
Well, I definitely would like to say, you know, our teachers, they are phenomenal. And I think throughout this process, they have not heard that we appreciate them. And I always want to say publicly that I do appreciate every single teacher that we have in this district. As a former third grade teacher, I truly appreciate the work of those third grade teachers, because they have now had to turn their hats into that world of accountability. Where it has always been there, the lens has now been spotlighted and focused on third grade. But again, our teachers are phenomenal. They are doing the work. They are working so very hard, and our students are moving and growing. And so I just want to publicly say that I appreciate those teachers out there. I also appreciate our coaches, because they are so involved in helping and support those teachers. And so I don't think that publicly our teachers, get enough praise. I just really don't. And then I think our coaches, they don't get enough praise either, because they're in there. They are really, like you said, they're in the trenches working. And so I just definitely want to lift up those two groups of people to really say thank you. And then in the end, John, we couldn't do it without our principals. Yes. And so Dr. Lyle and her team, they work very hard. And so we actually have principals in the central office today learning more about data and how to support students when they're struggling, and how to move those students who are not struggling. Because we have to focus on all of our students. So I just want to publicly thank those people, because they really are doing a great job every single day.
Very well said. Dr. Lyle?
We could also say thank you to our parents.
Yes.
We cannot do it alone. We are so lucky to have parent support. They're having to show us some patience and some grace, because some things we're having to learn as well. But without our parents and their supports and letting us know when they have questions and they have concerns, it's got to be a team effort. And so we are truly grateful for our parents and our community support.
Yes.
Yeah, Ms. Deckard, anything you like to add?
Well, just a little bit on the parents. We want you involved. So don't think that we don't want you there. It is a team effort, like they have said. We want to come together as a team. Whenever you have questions or needs, you reach out, and we will be there. Also, I want to say thank you to Dr. Watkins and Jefferson County. You all provide so many resources and so many opportunities to learn and have professional development. As a coach, I come away from these meetings and PDs going back to equip the teachers with things that they can use in the classroom as well. So we appreciate that as much.
Well, we certainly appreciate everybody you just mentioned, and also certainly appreciate the three of you for joining us today to discuss this very important topic. And I think this has been good. Hopefully our parents at home and anyone watching this has gotten a lot out of that today. So thank you to all three of you for being here today. And that wraps up our first ever JEFCOED Roundtable. We hope there'll be a lot more of them, and we hope you'll join us for those. Have a great day, everybody.